hear me, please tell me how I need to adjust the volume.
I think it could be a little loud.
How about that? Is that better?
A little deeper. It's good, like more lows, more bass.
No adjustments.
Make it a little loud.
How's that?
It's okay.
Shout. Okay, now I sound like I'm speaking into a microphone. Well, good evening, and this is the opening of the Niagara Chapter of the Society for Ethnomusicology, but this evening is also open to anyone, and I see some non-ethnotypes, it looks like, around here, and that's okay. I'm Dr. Terry Miller, and I'm the chair this year of the Niagara Chapter, and I'm going to give just a brief introduction to our guest speaker tonight, Professor Halim El-Dabh. And if you haven't heard of him, it's only because you haven't been aware of what's going on internationally in composition. He's world famous, and he's been around and famous since the 1940s. Halim comes from Egypt, where he studied agriculture originally. And he had an opportunity to come to the United States to study music, and he went, let's see, first Tanglewood?
First...
New England Conservatory?
First with the Pueblos.
Oh, that's right. At first he came to the United States to experience Native American music with the Pueblo Indians.
Both Santa Fe and Albuquerque.
But-
That's my first...
Yeah, but then later he studied composition, earned masters at Brandeis in New England, and knew and worked with most of the famous names of mid-20th century modern composition. And Halim's been a faculty member here at Kent since 1969 or 70? 69. He came from Howard University. And before he retired in 1991, he became a university professor, which is the highest rank that anyone can have. Now he's university professor emeritus. His works have been published by Peters, which is one of the most prominent publishers. His scores have been danced nationally, internationally. Martha Graham was one of his fans, and some of his works have been performed here at Kent. But sometimes you're not as well known here as you've been in New York and Athens, not Athens, Ohio either, the real Athens. And so Halim's going to speak about his relationship between composition and ethnomusicology.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, nice to be here addressing this very important meeting. I'm going to talk about, as a composer's journey through ethnomusicology. And, I'll start with this. Gacciali nome, Mali Lome. This is how I traveled as a composer through ethnomusicology. I wandered through villages, I joined musicians, I slept in the villages wherever I went. There were many places I visited. I visited Senegal, was able to go out there with the Wolof people, Senegambia, some Mandinka people there. I traveled to Mali. It was a very exciting place. I got lost there when I came into Mali. They took my passport because I said I was going to disappear in the wilderness and record in the field. So they wanted to be sure I was in some place they could find me. So they put me with a dance group and watched me that I'm still there dancing, so that I was not wandering around. I traveled in the villages of Niger and traveled with the Tuareg people and the fantastic Tuareg women. They always say, be careful. I mean, you gotta watch for these Niger and Tuareg women. They're very strong people. In Niger, you know the Niger women? You were laughing, but I thought you might know the Niger women. They're really, they say, beware of the women of Niger. But Niger is a huge place. And the women there actually play drums, unlike the other side of the Niger River, where women did not play any drums. But however, the women in the Niger region played drums, and the men played guitars. I traveled in Ethiopia. And the travel in Ethiopia through the Rift Valley and the ravines of the Rift Valley. And climbed mountains and with people, and once in a while we got attacked by hyenas. Not me, but the mules we had were attacked by hyenas. So as a composer, I traveled in many, many places to actually find out about those places. But let me start where I actually became involved with ethnomusicology and composition. It was back in the future. I'm going back to the future. In 1932, I was 11 years old. I must be okay. When I was 11 years old, I was introduced to a practicum course in ethnomusicology. Ethnomusicology was not, the term ethnomusicology was not even known. But here I give you a picture of a fascinating man. You can see this picture there. I don't know if you recognize this guy. King Fuad the First. In 1930, this is a good document here of, it's in Arabic, so you won't be able to read it. There was a conference that he initiated in 1932. The conference was called the International Arabic Music Conference. And you have to have a ticket like that. This is a ticket. You have to have a badge and a ticket to enter the Institute of Oriental Music in Cairo, which was renamed the Royal Institute of Arabic Music. So after this man. This man was a fantastic oud player. He played music as well as being a king. So therefore, he wanted to really bring all the musicians of the world to Cairo. And in 1932, and this is the invitation or the the idea of the conference and why it's taking place. And here is a list of the names of the scholars of the world that were invited to that conference. I'll read some of them. You might recognize some of them. From Spain, Professor Salazar. Does that ring a bell? Maybe. From Germany, Hindemith. Rings a bell. Okay. And von Hornbostel from Germany. Dr. Lachmann from Germany. Sachs, you know Sachs is, and he was involved with the, Dr. Hindemith was coming from the Hochschule, or the High Music Institute of Berlin. And von Hornbostel was coming from the Recording Institute of Berlin, of Germany. And Lachmann was coming from the National Library of Germany. Then from Hungary was Bela Bartok was invited. That was 1932. And he was in charge of the recording research in Cairo, Egypt, and neighboring country. And from Vienna, Viles. From Italy, Zambiri. From Great Britain, Henry Farmer. I'm sure you recognize some of those names. They were all invited to Cairo. And it was, my connection, of course, was my older brother. I was only 11. My older brother was about 12 years older than me. And he was aware of the things. He managed to get me where I'm supposed to be. So it got me to actually get to know my first ethnomusicological involvement in a world situation that took place in Cairo, Egypt in 1932. It was also the year where I started composing, and I had a series of compositions as a result. One was called Misriyat, which I will play, which translated as, if Chopin used the word Polonaise, this will be Egyptianese, so pertaining to Egypt. Then I have a group of work called Arabiyat, which is the Arabic music of the world of Arabic music, and the whole, then Ifriqiyat, Egypt and the whole continent of Africa, reflected in this particular thing, is the African element of these compositions. So in 1932, it was my actual indulgence as a composer, and I wouldn't call myself an ethnomusicologist at the age of 11, but I was exposed to a situation. Even though the king invited scholars, troops from the Sudan, from Kenya, from Uganda, from Libya, from Tunis, from Morocco, from Syria, from Lebanon, from Spain, from France, were invited to Cairo to participate in that huge situation. Cairo at that time was really a big center of activity. And the biggest, of course, by the time I was almost 20 years old, I was hit by something new that came from Europe. It was strange because it was the virus of romantic music descending on Cairo maybe in the mid-40s or the late 40s, where suddenly Cairo was open to all these fantastic orchestra coming to play, instead of the things that King Fuad did, but this entire romantic music. And you know how difficult that could be, because, you know, with romantic music, things could change. I'm not putting down romantic music, because I love it too, you know. So, but that is the scene of my first indulgence with that particular situation. So, the thing I'd like to play is from that 11 years old when I called it Misriya, or translated as Egyptian names, as one of the first pieces I did. So that was the trip at 11 years old. Ethnomusicology to me meant an engagement with the mythopoetic thought of the group I participated with. So in ethnomusicological sense, my idea of it is a total engagement, other than the factors of recording, documenting, and things, but the main part is the life force of that igniting desire and fire that takes place within a group of people, where their minds are just as one. And so that kind of engagement ignites in me my own mythopoetic nature. And the mythopoetic is that beyond the literacy of language. So you might have a literate language, but beyond the literacy is the myth and the poetry of that particular group of people you engage with. And so to me, that fires me to compose. I was not composing as a composer, picking up tunes or taking rhythms and tunes and themes, because that was not, and if I did at one time, but that was not the purpose. The purpose was to ignite that energy, that interrelation energy, which makes me compose music using my own language in a way. So I'm using my own language as I arrive to composing the music, but inspired by this interactive relationship. And what ignited in me, there were certain things about ethnomusicology, sometimes with the magic of the ethnomusicology, the magic of interrelationship. Sometimes it was the terrain, the physical, the animals, the trees, the openness of the situation. And where this contact with this wonderful world that I come in contact with. And some of the countries that I came to had this kind of magic, this kind of excitement that once you interact, you are in this situation. Play that piece that actually reflect an openness. Now I'm using Western musical instruments, and it's like wandering. So the different textures of my writing actually comes from me, but inspired again by the world of music that I am in touch with. So to me, the journey was full of surprises, full of incredible feelings and desires. One of the magic situations is coming from the situation in Zaire. Okay, let it run just without listening to it. I can hear it a little bit, that's fine. Yeah, you can let it go. This one man, a Mayobo man, in the Kenya-Rwanda region of Zaire, I think his magic was that he knew I was coming. It's like this guy named Halim was living in DC, must come and see me, way in Kenya-Rwanda region, Mayobo, and he has to come and bring me with him to Washington, D.C. That was his magic, and I think he did it, because suddenly I was sent on a mission by Smithsonian to go all the way there and actually come to this region, and I saw 9 wooden trumpet players. One of them is this man, who was very sick, but he showed that he didn't appear to be sick. Okay, now let's listen to this one. This is the African, this is the goddess, the woman goddess. That, orchestra and French chorus singing that. So this one was dealing with the nature of the women goddesses, and here a group of women were lamenting or deploring the fact this was on the River Nile, the River Nile was flooding one part of the southern region of the Nubian province of Egypt. And some of the temples was being buried, and the goddesses were singing. So this was the voice of the goddesses. Go back to that magic guy who actually from Zaire called me to come. So on a mission by Smithsonian, I went there to bring people to Washington, D.C. To perform in the bicentennial, as a matter of fact. And so I managed to get 15 women Ikonda from Central Forest region. But I went to that region far in the eastern part of Zaire and met these 9 men who play wooden trumpet and they dance with it. Fabulous kind of playing. So they came with me to Washington, D.C. And this one man, after he arrived, he played and then he collapsed. And we had to take him to Georgetown University Hospital. And he had a collapsed lung, collapsed intestines, his intestines were in terrible shape. He couldn't really do anything. But he sat down in Georgetown University Hospital, grinning, watching color TV, as though everything was fine. Now, this man never seen even the city of Kinshasa in Zaire, never been out of that village. And I was determined that this man knew exactly what he wanted. He was fixed. His lung was perfect, intestines were perfect, his health went back to normal, and we took him back to the village, perfect. So it's like, you know, he decreed that he must come and go back. So there he was. So that kind of magic, I think, was very powerful. The other magic was, when I say magic, is the ability to go beyond the physical nature of a human being, that you are able to expand yourself or extend yourself. You could look at it from different ideas, but that was part of the excitement of the journey of a composer in an ethnomusicological world. The other one was in the island of Itaparica outside Bahia in Brazil, inhabited by Afro-Brazilians, most of the island. And the magic was bringing spirits from Africa to contact, actually, their own people. And that was a very powerful experience, because you actually, maybe I was dreaming or under hypnosis, but whatever I saw was, I don't know if you know the Egungun ceremony of the Yoruba people. The Egungun ceremony uses a cloth, a special cloth that covers the body and the head, and when you look at them, you will not recognize that there was anybody inside the cloth. So the cloth, the body, you see all these cloths as a multicolored cloth. And they dress in these multicolored cloths, but you look at them, there's nothing inside. But you hear the deep voice comes out from inside of them, very powerful voice. So in this Tejero, which is a sacred ground in Itaparica, I saw these cloths hanging in the air without being able to see the inside. And a diviner with a large stick hitting the ground, that was like 3 o'clock in the morning, separating the two worlds, the world of the spirit and the world of the living. I could have been in a state of hallucination, because I was there most of the day and all night, and that was happening at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I saw these figures coming. But here, the excitement is that there was something there that went beyond the physical reality of the figures we're seeing. And the significance of it was the contact that the people in Brazil felt, energy and contact with the people of Africa. There was a kind of a very strong connection that made a statement of reality to the people, to the Afro-Brazilian people in the island of Itaparica off the coast of Bahia. Anybody is familiar with that island or that part of Brazil? So this part of the magic. The other part is the collective nature of the people, that the people actually, you feel like they are one, basically one, in their relationship. So that was very, very powerful experience to me, to see that kind of collective relationship. I felt that in different places. I felt that in Ethiopia, and in Nigeria, and in Mali, and where massive number of people actually work together as one. One aspect of that extended knowledge is the dream world. The dream world in ethnomusicology is so fantastic, because I came on the Niger River. I was in Guinea, and the government of Guinea actually took me over. I was actually sent by Smithsonian. However, when I arrived there, they didn't want to recognize I was sent by anybody, and took charge of me. Gave me a Land Rover, an aeroplane, and Sékou Touré was the president, who descended in one of the towns I was staying in, and I was wondering what I was doing there, but he saw I was doing okay. And I came into Sigiri, and I was interested in knowing the history of the balafon. And the history of the balafon was told to me in a dream world. The people I met entered a dream state and went back to Sundia, 1325 or something like that, 14th century, and described to me in that dream state the performance of the balafon. Now, if you go out in Sigiri, everybody's playing balafons. The balafons are all over the place. People are playing them. Little kids, 4 or 5 years old, are falling on them and learning how to play. It's like the whole community is playing as one performer, and the whole community are together. So through that involvement, I learned that the history of the balafon actually goes back to the court of Sundiat, that it was played there, and its history goes back to at least or before the 14th century. So we have a contact of history. And that fascination in the world that I've lived through, that composing through ethnomusicology, was very fascinating to me, because that contact, the dream world, the magic, the surrounding, and the collective relationship of people. I know when I was in Berlin, one ethnomusicologist by the name of Danilou, what's his first name? I forgot.
Alain.
Huh? Alain Danilou, yeah. He was very upset. It was a meeting in 1964 that I attended in the High Institute of the High Institute, or school, I think they call it, in Berlin, of music. And he was very upset that a composer, that you shouldn't mix the two. But I comforted him and said, no, I'm not looking for melodies or rhythm. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just indulging. I'm living the life of the people I interact with. So in this situation, it was practically that essence of being and moving in a world of fantastic beauty. And let's play a little more of my music to get a feeling of it. Yeah, this was me and Otto Luning doing an electronic piece jointly. This is just the beginning of it. It's electronically induced. Between him, actually, was keys. It was at Columbia Princeton Electronic Studio. It's a long piece, I'm just playing a little bit, but the fascination here. So Otto Luning to me was ethno also. And but it doesn't matter what medium. Everyone can keep a language in a way. Now I don't know what's coming next. Is a piece I did. Yeah, this is putting my soul out here. Maybe I'm in. This is Cassandra. It's the visionary, the seer. It's the one that knows the future and see the opening of the light. after that, the whole future became known, because this is the essence of seeing what's going to happen in the future. This is a father of saints, like in Brazil, the father of the candomblé. Maybe this. You want to hear more music? Can you? Another 5 minutes? To finalize, I found out that really everybody of us, we are all ethnos to each other. I don't think there's somebody here who's not ethno. In other words, the term ethnomusicology is that as many people there that are ethnomusicology, I mean, we are all ethno to each other, culturally speaking. I mean, going back to the future, to Cairo, when I was 11 and then when I was 18, my big ethno hero was Johann Sebastian Bach. He was my ethno hero, and I asked my brother, I said, gee, he sounds like he's got Arabic music in him. When he tried to explain to me, well, he played, there was a lot of lute music in Bach, you know. He said the suites. You know, my older brother really knew a lot, and he was really, you know, I'm one of 9, but he was the one that, he was 12 years old, older than me, so he was in his 20s while I was younger, but, so Bach was really my big ethno hero, because I looked at the world that everybody was really, has their own particular culture. So I had my culture. All the people that came to Cairo had different culture. When I traveled, they accepted my culture. And one thing that fascinated me, that I could play for them as well they played for me, and the thing that fascinated people in a village was the virtuosity of the performance. So if I played the drums, and was in my own tradition, my own ethnic tradition. They might not understand it, but they would understand the virtuosity engagement between me and my drum. There was a monk in Ethiopia. When I was in Ethiopia, I traveled in many villages, and I ended up followed by 33 people from different villages. And they ended up camping outside my house in Addis Ababa. And I had to find work for them or money to keep them going. And the 33 people involved a monk and a young priest who always got mad at the monk. He got drunk because, you know, drinking in Ethiopia is you don't drink water, you always drink fermented water. So everybody gets high. And always this young priest jumps at the monk and make a whole kind of, you know, a storm of protest to him. And then I had people from different villages, plus what the Ethiopian called pleasure women was part of the thing in the Ethiopian group. You know, Ethiopians probably preceded the sexual revolution of America by centuries, because in Ethiopia, you could marry, in some of the villages you marry by contract. You could marry for 3 months or 6 or a year, or if you went to the church or you have a religious ceremony, you married for life. So I had this group of people just following me. So the monk played a big harp, a guitar-type harp, and he was playing very serenely. And I challenged him one day, and I took his plectrum and I started making noise with his harp. And the guy looked at me and said, "Hey, we used to do this 30 years ago." So my involvement was his. I tried to be contemporary. He said, no, we used to do that. So actually, when I performed, and I used all of them, and we actually composed music. It's too bad I don't have a recording of that, but we did record music that we all composed together. In other words, with their different tradition, plus myself, composed music together. So, in the final thing I said, we're really, each one of us is an ethnic to if we look around, every one of us is, doesn't matter where we come from. We are all ethnomusicologists or just different ethnic cultures, because each individual of us has a different universe that they belong to and that comes out of them. So we are all really, so let's forget about what we call mainstream, because mainstream can only be in museums or maybe some archaic schools, let's say. So, but the reality really is ethnomusicology as a dynamic force for people like me to be inspired and keep composing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Halim. Would you like to ask him any questions?
According to University, Ohio State, during the forum, you're not supposed to ask questions. And if you dare, you'll be kicked out.
Maybe protest.
Yeah, you may protest. Okay.
Comments, questions, dialogue with him a little bit. You've got a chance.
No statements. I mean, I'm looking at Ohio State and, is it South Carolina? Yeah. Where they kicked people out because they were asking questions.
Dr. Nori, you got involved with Thai music for a while.
Excuse me?
You're playing at the Thai Seoul. You played Thai music for a year.
Yeah.
And did you get something or something inspired you from
Of course.
Thai?
Yeah, everything I do, Saul inspired me and still inspiring me.
What exactly is inspiring you? Can you compose something out of that inspiration?
Yes.
I think.
And and it will be happening soon. I mean, it's there. So,
Yeah.
Saul, yeah, I was part of the Thai ensemble. So everything I did there is part of me. But it's going to take a form, a different form. It will be the inspiration of the energy that you gave to me and the ensemble gave to me.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And I hope someday we can compose music together.
Together, yeah, okay.
Do it live without any form or whatever.
Yeah,
That's the feeling.
we will do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's an honor for me to be asked. Thank you.
Who are some other musicians that you worked with and composed with or influenced by?
Well, I studied privately with Aaron Copland, and one-to-one relationship. And Aaron Copland, that was in the 50s, he was fascinated by what I was doing, and I was fascinated by his music. He always thought that that whatever I'm doing is going to come up all right. And I was fascinated by his technique of sound making, of orchestration. And we had a very good relationship. And as a matter of fact, he came to hear many of my concerts in New York. The other person I studied with was Irving Fine. And he was probably the most compassionate person that I've met as a composer. And he died young. He was very involved. Aaron Copland, he got it, he gives the idea, he interact, but he doesn't really go deep and involved. Irving Fine was very emotional and very, very intense person. Another person that I remember is by the name of Francis Judd Cook. And I owe a lot to this man. He was at Union Conservatory. Because when I first came, I was walking on shaky grounds. I didn't know whether I knew everything or not. There I was in a master's degree program at Union Conservatory. Of course, I was first invited to Juilliard, but I didn't want to go to Juilliard. I thought I wanted to go to Hopi Land instead of Juilliard. I went to the Southwest. But then I came to New England Conservatory and met this guy. And one of the things, he was very powerful, that when I came in with my music, we used to do a lot of Bartok, Schoenberg, and Palestrina with him. And when I was composing and I was sort of hesitating, there I am writing symphonies and coming from Egypt. And then he looked at me one day, trying to explain to him the theory makeup of my music. He looked at me, he said, "Hey, El-Dabh, don't worry, God is sitting at your elbow." And I looked at him, and it's like my body went, totally relaxed when he said that. He said, "There's thousands of theory makers. Let them figure it out. Don't worry about it." I mean, this man, really, I owe to him a great deal because I was nervous. I was in shaky grounds. I didn't know what I was doing means anything. But this man was solid ground. Really told me that that's the... And then he sent me over. Actually, it was Aaron Copland that sent me over to him. Aaron Copland and Irving Fine sent me to Francis Judd Cook at New England Conservatory. So it was a good connection. So the question was about my teachers, right?
Or other musicians that you were interested in?
Yeah, the other musicians, of course, is the musicians I encountered. It's nothing like sitting down in a remote area in Africa and listening to the sound of Dorzi people, of southern Ethiopia, or listening to the Ikonda people, or to the Pygmies. I mean, the sound and the harmonic and contrapuntal relationship of the Ikonda voices is so fantastic. I mean, it's really, I mean, that engagement in itself was very powerful to me as teachers, that I listened to them. And some of the one fiddle players, whether it's in the Congo, Sudan, or Egypt, because they all play the one fiddle, plus the Saud, you know, the one fiddle tradition is really very powerful. To hear some of that was very, very powerful relationship. So people that played back and forth with me, or I sat down and listened to them, were part of my teachers. Terry?
Anyone else? All right, well then, thank you very much. When I first came to Kent to be interviewed in 1975,
Come this way.
well, it's okay. He took me around the campus, and I don't know if we went to lunch, but I didn't know anything. I was hired here after the semester began. It was quarters then. And
Yeah, you look lost.
I was lost. I was lost for the first 4 months. So anyhow, we've been together a long time.
Great pleasure.
And he's not done yet. He's still writing stuff. He's supposed to be working on a Chinese opera. We want to hear it.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll do that. Thanks.
The next segment of the program, I'm going to ask my friend T. Temple Tuttle, whom I know as Tom, to come and introduce the program. Dr. Tuttle is from Cleveland State University, where he's taught ethnomusicology and music education, I don't know how many years, maybe more years than I've been here. And he's a specialist in the music of South India. And tomorrow he's presenting a paper about his research, but tonight it's East European music. Dr. T. Do you want this on, or? Because I'd like to probably turn it off when the music starts.
Halim and I were just reminiscing. Actually, we go back 2 years